Now we're ready to go. All right. My name is Dennis Speed, and on behalf of the LaRouche Political Action Committee, I want to welcome everybody here today. Uh, there's a lot that can be said, but there's a new conception, again, of the Manhattan Project that Mr. LaRouche has put forward. He's talked about the need to develop what he called a Manhattan Party. I'm sure he'll be able to tell us exactly what he means by that. I'll just indicate that after Mr. LaRouche opens, we'll go into our question and answer period, but we have a special presentation about something that we're going to do right after Lynn's opening remarks. So, Lynn, the floor is now yours.
Okay, first of all, people will remember that we had a conference on Tuesday, and it was an idiotic conference. It was absolutely insane. Some of the people featured in that on the stage were sane, but most of the audience in general, which is a screaming bunch of idiots, which had no understanding of anything. And on the same time, that the way the thing was presented as a campaign was an abomination. There were some people in there who were not performing abominations. But the general effect was that the sponsor, Obama, was who was working on basis of orders from a team in the British system. And that fraud was made as the Tuesday appearance. It was a screwball appearance, which no sane person would willingly wish to do unless they had some great duty to run, like going to the toilet or something. But that's what happened. All the people who were running as candidates or listed as candidates were completely scrambled or idiots. One of the two. Most of the best ones were scrambled, and the others were idiots. So this was an abomination beyond imagination, and the source of the thing was the British Empire, which was directing Obama. That's what was happening. And that's the evil that we have to deal with today. Now, at these premises, where many of us have met repeatedly among ourselves, and some people came in who weren't there before, and some people who are not there who were before. But that's a perfectly normal arrangement. But what we have to consider is this point, as in Manhattan in particular, which is usually our main point of departure for warfare, for winning warfare. And for us, Manhattan is the center of all good things. That doesn't mean everything in Manhattan is good, but it means the body itself has a good quality inside it, buried someplace or some location. Anyway, so this is what the issue is. Now, there have been people who've been operating, even some of our members of my organization, who have been sucked into playing games with the truth. And I have just announced them that I would quit the organization if they tried to continue that. My organization. And I made it clear to the members attending this earlier this day that would be the arrangement. And the people who were there all attended, all agreed we would do that. But we had a couple of 8-balls who got into our quarters and did some bad things. So we are now back on tape, as we were on everything we did on Tuesday, to what we did on Tuesday. Not what they did on Tuesday, but what we did. And everything else, I think we are in a position to take charge. But we have to take charge because we have a few people in our own organization who acted like clowns, and they have to be straightened out. But that will be fixed. I assure you, that will be fixed. We had a meeting, of course, earlier this midday, and we had settled everything. That is fixed. We are not going to go the way that Obama and his friends want us to go. And so that's what the situation is. And I say this to this body here, which by its nature as a body of people who've met here with me many times now so far, I thought we'd give you that straight confidence about what the situation is in a general terms. And if you want some particular expression of that, I'd be willing to deliberate for it, at least in an economical space of time. So let's have some fun.
Yes. Yes. All right. So let's go with the first. Not you, Rick. Alvin, in this case.
Hi, Lynn. It's Alvin here again. I'm going to talk to you about an intervention that took place yesterday, but it was Thursday afternoon that I was informed of there was an enemy sighting in Manhattan, and they were going to congregate at Peter Cooper Square, and some fellow by the name of Adair Turner was going to talk about a book called Debt and the Devil. And so this was a British operation that was going to take place. And about, I think there were 4 activists, a member and 3 other activists that attended. I was there. The thing was attended by only about 32 people in a very large auditorium. So it had a very low turnout, mostly Brits, few Americans in there. And our intervention began about he spoke for about an hour, and I swear to you, it seemed like 4. All mumble jumble, the typical type of economics that you attack and ridicule. So I thought that it was clear to me what my job was to be, what my function should be there. And the interventions through breaking up the proceedings by just intervening and raising things like Glass-Steagall, Alexander Hamilton, and Abraham Lincoln began about halfway into his presentation. One of the members was escorted out. I believe at that point they were still not aware that LaRouche PAC was in force there, being present. When the questions and answers period came up, I walked up and was able, you could hear people talking without, but I went to the mic and I began by expressing to him that I was somewhat amused by his statements regarding economics and finance, when he early in his remarks he admitted that the crash of 2008 took him completely by surprise. Yet he chose to come to the United States and tell us what financial policies he thinks we should be following. But then I said, actually what I really want to raise is the austerity programs or mission that you have, that policy, and that it really is about population reduction, and that his milieu of Sir Richard Attenborough, Prince Philip, and the President of the United States, Obama, were all in line with this type of policy. And that's what your austerity and budget cuts really represented. At that point, the heckling began. Oh, I heard in the background, how many more LaRoucheites are there in here? This is another LaRouche person. And so then the heckling began for me to get to my question, and my question was as follows. Why don't you, sir, why don't you, sir, take you and your crew, go back to England, find Cameron, and open a pig farm, because you're all vermin. They did not respond to that question. Now, just before the proceedings began, we were informed that the head of the Bank of England, Mervyn King, was sitting prominently in the front row. Now, what was interesting to me was the smile that came upon my face when that happened, where frankly, not too long ago, I would have been intimidated by such a thing. And indeed, in interventions that I was assigned to in the past, there were times where I just couldn't muster up. The only thing that would elevate was my heart and pulse, but I couldn't get up and confront anybody on this. Yesterday was quite different. A smile came across my face, and then I knew even more so what needed to be done. So we ruffled some feathers. We disrupted their pretty little moment. And I think they know now that there are some people in New York that represent something, and we don't want any part of them.
I think that is most commendable and appropriate.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rick, go ahead.
Mr. Lurch, this is Rick from Bergen County, New Jersey.
Yeah, good.
Last night I was watching the webcast presented by Jeff Steinberg, and this to me was a complete bombshell. It's going to take a while to absorb everything. I mean, it was really quick in whatever time, it was an hour or so. And he brought out something that was released on Thursday, and if I could put it to the cameras, this is one of the articles that came out by Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald on secret, and there are actual military documents in this pack. And I printed it was around 2 in the morning. I printed out the whole thing. It's about 300 pages long, and I've started reading it. And this thing is absolute dynamite, as far as I'm concerned. The subtitle, "The Secret Military Documents Expose the Inner Workings of Obama's Drone Wars." And for example, and Jeff last night mentioned this, that every president since Gerald Ford has upheld an executive order banning assassinations by U.S. personnel. Congress has avoided legislating the issue or even defining the word assassination. This has allowed proponents of the drone wars to rebrand assassinations with more palatable characterizations, such as the term of the day, targeted killings. And I know that you have mentioned this many times over the past number of years. I think we've implicitly, at least I have implicitly known about this from other sources about the Tuesday meetings where decisions are made, but the thing that differentiates this documentation is that there are specific government documents that have been obtained which nobody can ignore. Nobody can ignore what's written here. And this is a shredding of the Constitution, completely and totally. It's been going on probably around since the beginning of the Bush administration through now. Congress seems to be doing absolutely nothing about this issue. It's a flagrant violation of the Constitution. It's a flagrant violation of international law. There's all kinds of war crimes affiliated with this. This is not only about particular terrorists, quote, terrorists being targeted and killed regardless of their nationality and situation. Anyone who is in the near vicinity of somebody who is targeted is considered to be a terrorist as well. So the killing of individuals, collateral damage, so to speak, has no credence whatsoever. So my point, what's my point on this? To me, this is a huge incentive to get this out to Congress. I mean, it's going to do one of two things. Either Congress is going to do something about it, which has to lead to impeachment. There's no way one can look at these documents and go into an investigation of this without bringing up the issue of impeachment. It has to come up. Now, if Congress ignores it, what does it say about Congress? They're criminals. They're total criminals if they ignore it. So I love what Jeff brought out. I think this thing is great, and I know I have started badgering my congressman about it, but I'd appreciate any comments you might have.
Well, first of all, the event which followed the Tuesday so-called debate. Now, this was ordered by specifically Obama. But Obama, to my knowledge, since early last Friday, that Obama was merely a stooge for a British invasion into the affairs of the United States. And the British interests were the people that were specifically supporting Obama in this policy. Now, my view at that point is several things. First of all, the whole thing, the whole show, that Tuesday meeting, was a sideshow, one of the most corrupt things ever presented in modern times by any part of the United States government. This was the most evil thing ever generated in the recent centuries of the United States. This was treason in the worst extreme, and Obama was the prime embodiment of that. Now, on the specific case that you did make reference to in particular, on this case, we had Jeff Steinberg together with two other people on our team who on Friday evening presented a summation of the most essential facts about this whole matter. And I had identified the British angle on the Friday before the conference there, and I had the picture. Then we did on Friday, this recent Friday, we had the whole fact laid out by three people in our statement on 8 o'clock on yesterday. The whole fact structure, including what Jeff Steinberg did at some length, was supplied at that point. That information is clearly influenced. It's also clear that certain people inside my own organization have played opportunist games with reality. And I told them that either I throw them out or they throw me out. And I think the people who met today on Saturday, who are leading people in our organization there, all concurred with that estimation. So what we're doing is we're going to clean house in our way. We're going to defend the United States. We're going to drive the British invaders out of our existence. And we're going to bring members of our Congress into conformity with the purposes of our Constitution. And that's the approach we will take. And I will be absolutely merciless on this issue, on that point. Anybody who's going to try to destroy and corrupt the United States while I'm still alive is going to have a big problem. And if I happen to die in the meantime, it's still going to be a rather big problem for them, because my corpse will stake all over the place on them.
Thank you.
So let's fight, have fun.
Hi, Lynn, it's Michelle. Hello. Hi, it's Michelle.
Yeah, good.
Hi, yeah. I wanted to get your thoughts on something that had come up. Rachel Brinkley and I had gone to an event here in the city earlier this week to intervene. The event was on the subject of the struggle against injustice, resistance against injustice. The speakers were Cornel West and Eric Hedges. And to give you kind of a character of it, it was a dialogue. The whole thing was the two of them on stage speaking to each other. There were about 150 people in the room, most of which are associated with different leftist groups with their issues and such. And they were discussing the character of someone in the fight. So West, who's a civil rights leader, was talking about questions of striving for virtue. He discussed the idea of learning to die before you can learn to live, that you have to get over your fear of death and then you can fight. But he said, I'm not optimistic, but I have hope. Hedges had a different take. Hedges, who has written whole books on the resistance fight, and he has an interesting background. He was working at the New York Times for 15 years, but resigned when he refused to cave into pressure to stop speaking out against the Iraq War. However, what he was focused on for this discussion was to communicate to the audience that you have to resist, but you have to do so knowing that you will never succeed. He said, the enemy is too big and powerful, you will fail. He said, everything you do in the grand scheme of things is futile, but it's not meaningless. So afterwards, we spoke to them about various, we intervened during the forum, of course, and they agreed on the issues per se, impeaching Obama, Glass-Steagall, but I spoke to Hedges afterwards about, they had both referenced Kant. So what I brought up to Hedges was, well, have you ever read Schiller? And he said he hadn't. And I briefed him a little bit on Schiller taking on the failure of the Enlightenment, that you had this enlightened class who failed to achieve the political victory. The French Revolution was a failure. And that Schiller was intervening to fix the moral failures of the educated class so that we could succeed and uplift mankind. So he expressed some interest in reading Schiller, but then said, to be honest, I'm a Calvinist and don't have a very high view of mankind. So, my concern, was what's the effect for the audience in having their leaders tell them you can't expect to succeed. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this problem.
Well, the answer is very simple. If they have that problem, then they disqualified as leaders. If they get this weak-brained, weak-minded thing, it's impossible. Yes, there are a lot of people who like that. And they rotate around. You used to find them around Harvard University, similar places like that. They would gather around in the streets. I had a lot of experience with that stuff, so I refer to it for that reason. But it was crap, plainly. And they were gutless wonders. The question is, what are you going to do for the future of mankind? Everyone dies. Every human being dies. It is inevitable. Now, sometimes people are more fortunate in having a longer life. Sometimes it's the worst alternative in their mind. So therefore, the question is, how do we organize people to respond to the fact that while all people die, all human beings die, nobody but a human being has a concept of immortality of mankind, which only mankind has. In other words, when you die, if your life is useful in creating the future as an advancement in the future, your life was not wasted. This is something that soldiers in warfare, in general warfare, have had to deal with, and they dealt with it. Many soldiers of the United States, both in the war before mine and my war, and the war that followed, these were tough wars. A lot of people died. A lot of my friends died. Some didn't die. A lot of friends suffered from the effects of the forces which took over the United States when Franklin Roosevelt had died. And ever since Franklin Roosevelt had died, we've been fighting against the Wall Street crowd. Most of the time, Wall Street was looking for a vengeance against Franklin Roosevelt. He's a satanic force. Frankly, you have to say it's a satanic force. Wall Street is a satanic force. The British Empire is a satanic force. There are other things, but let's look at chiefly there are also options. There are nations and publications in nations, populations of nations, who really are honest and who work. the increase of the productive powers of labor is actually a moral proposal rather than just something to be admired. It's a necessity. And therefore, the creative powers of mankind, that is the ability of the dead person to have in advance, have created an advancement to the benefit of the life of humanity in general. That is the purpose of human life, is to perpetuate the progress of mankind by expending one's life in the purpose of creating a better future for mankind as a whole in the course of living. So all these kinds of things of how you deduce things and can compare things and so forth, it's really nonsense. The question is, what is the sum total of what a nation can contribute to humanity, or what the individual person, by living, can contribute to humanity? These are the real moral issues. This includes the extension to space, to the galaxy, to Kepler. These are foreign things in foreign areas. We have planets within the solar system and beyond, which will sooner or later be mastered and made use of by mankind from Earth. It is mankind's contribution to the universe, to the extent that mankind has a contribution to give and is able to give to the universe as such. And that's mankind's intention. That's mankind's purpose in existing, is the ability to create the elimination of evil and of waste of time, which is an evil, the waste of life, of not responding to the opportunity of making the condition of humanity better. So the idea of making humanity better for all people as possible is the primary concern and the proper devotion of every sane, developed personality.
Sorry, Bruce. Good afternoon, Lynn. It's Bruce from New Jersey. Although I did want to point out that given the amount of events that we've had going on in Manhattan, I consider myself at least a New York City strap hanger. But in any case, I did want to report on another event that occurred yesterday over in New Jersey at Rutgers University, which was sponsored by the New Jersey Citizens Action Coalition. And the main theme of the event was that they brought people in to identify areas where, in effect, people were saying people are being put under economic slavery. And, you know, numerous people at the event brought that out, whether it was, you know, the occurrence of payday loans, student loans, the fact of people losing their houses. In fact, yesterday morning when I opened my local paper, there was an article where the state of New Jersey is now getting $300 million of revenue this year from the sale by the towns in the state of tax liens. In other words, investors come in, they buy up the tax liens where people can't afford to pay the taxes on their houses. And these investors turn around and can get anywhere up to 18% interest against the taxes that people can't afford to pay in the first place. So that was basically the theme. At the end of the first panel of the event, one of your Rachel Brinkley, who had gone there with me and another person, brought up in the first question the issue of Glass-Steagall, and that, you know, of the continued financial collapse, and that's what these people were really talking about. And that seemed to, from that point on, change the entire dynamic from people bringing up in the next panel the fact that Elizabeth Warren had gone to school there and was now down in Washington, D.C., although people generally associate her being from Massachusetts, that she had actually been taught there and was now in Congress fighting it, fighting for Glass-Steagall. One of the first speakers was a senator from here in New Jersey who was not signed on yet, but who had been approached by myself and others on Glass-Steagall. The next speaker was a congressman from New Jersey who, in fact, on the previous Wednesday, I had been able to talk to when we did our delegation down to Washington, D.C. So, immediately that's what everybody started talking about. Either that or there were already people there who knew what we were, what Glass-Steagall was about. The former Speaker of the New Jersey Assembly was there, who was a co-sponsor of the Glass-Steagall resolution in the New Jersey Assembly. And I had a chance to talk to her and another person outside who turned out to be the president of the county freeholders. And when I approached them, she turned to this person and said, "Here's my guy on Glass-Steagall," because I had spoken to most of the, over the period, to different people in the Assembly and Senate on Glass-Steagall. So it's very well known. In fact, the only signer to Glass-Steagall down in Washington from the New Jersey congressional delegation was a former New Jersey assemblyman and sponsor of the Glass-Steagall resolution there. So that's what everybody started talking about. And unlike the previous report that Michelle gave, what started to happen was we started motivating people on Glass-Steagall. There was a lady from the NAACP who took resolutions to get signed to turn out to her local congressman. In fact, the same congressman that I just referenced who was not signed on down there. We had other people doing the same thing that wanted us to get back. The president of the freeholders said, "I want a sit-down meeting with you. We have to discuss this issue of Glass-Steagall." And I'm hoping that because there are a lot of events going on, that you are and others are getting a lot of these reports on in fact, the level of activity that is going on and has been going on, particularly in the last couple of weeks. Anyway, I did want to bring that out to you, and I hope people will pass on to you a lot of these reports.
But they are these reports they're heavily, and I'm making some of the reports myself eagerly in order to get this thing in the shape needed. We have to get rid of Obama. It's understandable. Obama must be ejected from office now. It's an urgent matter. The very existence of the United States depends upon removing Obama from office now. Because Obama has never been anything except a stepson of one of the most murderous, mass murderous people in life. In other words, his stepfather was the most evil man of his time that we know of. Then, but the stepfather, allowed his mother, that is Obama's mother, to get out of that particular area. But what happened was the effect was that Obama inherited the disease, which was the characteristic of his stepfather. He was one of the worst murderers in that whole region. And Obama is an heir of that habit. Obama is an evil man, which should not have been brought into any public office of authority. Now, we've had him in our case for 2 terms now. We also had Bush. Now, the second Bush was a stupid idiot. But there was Dick Cheney. And Cheney made up for the lack of evil found in the poor, dumb Bush. He really was a Bush League character, the kind that couldn't set fire. But that's what he was. So this is what we've been suffering with. We got now 4 terms of a U.S. president. And these 4 terms of a U.S. president have been a force of evil against the people of the United States. Huh? Bush, twice, Cheney involved, huh? And also Obama. Obama is evil, pure evil. Everything about him. Now, what we published last night, that is night ago, we published a report which included that of 2 of my particular associates in the broadcast broadcast last night, and some of that information is circulating through other channels now. We're circulating it actually heavily. We're laying down some heavy evidence, and we're also correcting people who become stupid once in a while. We don't like to have our people become stupid. We consider that a liability to their achievements. But that's the point. We're in that kind of situation. We're in a fighting situation, and we're fighting for something, not fighting for a cause, but for fighting for the defense of the continuation and promotion of the human species, which is the only thing really worth fighting for. It's the proper devotion of success for any individual, any human individual, is to have the ability and resources to make a contribution to the future of mankind, which is systemic, not just particular. And that's the thing we must always fight for. Fight for the improvement of the moral and intellectual qualities of the human individual, especially on a large basis.
Right.
Good afternoon, Mr. LaRouche. Hi.
Oh, my good old friend.
Yeah. Hi, this is Eugene from the Bronx. I would like to ask you, you stress that there is no creativity in mathematics, but what about the men that invented the mathematics that we have today, like algebra, geometry, trigonometry, calculus? Weren't they being creative? Weren't they finding out discoveries in those fields of mathematics? They created those fields of study. And suppose there would be a mathematician today that would invent a new branch of mathematics called under a new name, like geometry was a new branch to algebra, trigonometry was a new branch, calculus was a new branch. Wouldn't that be creative in a sense?
All those things you listed are things that I despise.
Pardon me? Say
for good reasons.
that again, please. What?
Because they're all wrong. What happened, the period of competent science, and there was only one outstanding scientist in the 20th century. Only one. And he was Jewish.
Einstein?
Albert Einstein was the only competent scientist in the 20th century. The others were makeups. And Einstein was the greatest intellectual figure in science in the 20th century. All the others were imitations or cheapskates or cheap shots. Huh? So the problem today is mathematics has become, as it's been taught in the 20th century and now presently, is even worse. Mathematics as taught is the destruction of the mental powers of the human individual. And the greatness of mathematical work died out, except for Einstein and a few other people like him associated with him. And I knew a couple of those individuals I worked with who were not insane, were not rotten, who were successful, who were great. But what we've had in the schools, well, you have some teachers who were very serious and not very sincere. And the work they did is according to the standard which was given to them. They were excellent in terms of their accomplishments as teachers. This, particularly the Manhattan area in teachers, was one of the best standards for education, in public education. It was because Manhattan was an area in which poor people coming into New York City and surviving there or around New York City were able to develop culture and life of some meaningful. Most other parts of the United States were deprived, especially the southern states. The southern states are really not civilized. That some people like to be civilized, but they aren't really qualified to be civilized. So therefore, we've had a destruction, a progressive destruction overall over the 20th century and into now the present 21st century. That has been a period of increasing degeneration of the minds and science of the human population. The issue now, which is one we should pose for a consideration in Manhattan in particular, should be take over the effecting of a change which follows the precedent of Albert Einstein and use him as a model of reference for progress. Once you have that standard clearly in your mind, you understand what was wrong with the rest of the people.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a really good idea. Bill, you're next.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Lynn. This is your 95-year-old World War II veteran, Bill Monroe, back here at you again.
I'm only 93 years old.
Yeah,
you're a senior.
Yeah, I'm doing fairly well, Lynn, all things considered. Bruce Todd and I went this past Wednesday down to visit Congressman Daniel Payne Jr. at his office, and of course he was absent, but his secretary, Martha Washington, took down everything that we had to say to him, and she's going to get back to us, and we'll be looking forward to her getting back to us. Our next endeavor will be to visit Menendez and bring to his attention about the Glass-Steagall, which neither one of them have actually signed on to yet. So we'll be collaborating them and doning them and anything else we can outside of breaking a leg. So just want to let you know, sir, we're working on it diligently. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Good to talk with you again.
Good afternoon, Mr. LaRouche. How are you?
I'm alive.
Good. Good to see you. I'm Erica. I'm actually visiting from Alabama. I came up last week for the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March, which, of course, you had something to do with putting that together. But I'm speaking right now. One of the things that happened as a result of this 20th anniversary commemoration is Robert Kennedy Jr. He sent a message to everybody who participated in the march in relationship to vaccines, because he's working with a whistleblower from the CDC who discovered that some data had been covered up or communicated in the wrong manner, that covered up information to the effect that black boys who received certain vaccines were having very high rates of autism, but the reports covered up that fact. So we're only now discovering this. And this follows, of course, maybe a 40 or 50-year increase in the rates of autism, and people trying to figure out why those rates are increasing. And one of the theories for many years has been that maybe vaccines are part of that, particularly the kind of preservatives that they put in vaccines. They put mercury in, they put aluminum in, which are heavy metals, which are toxic to the brain. However, the medical establishment recently said, well, no, vaccines are not a cause of autism. But since then, this whistleblower came up with this new information, and he tried to bring the information to black leadership, but nobody would listen to him. I'm talking about Robert Kennedy now, and he finally brought it to Minister Farrakhan, and Minister Farrakhan is sharing that information now with everyone and has called for a march on the CDC on October 25th, which is this week coming up. So I just wanted to share that information and see what thoughts you may have on that. Thank you.
I think the problem of something like occurring. We're getting an echo here. Where's the echo coming from? Oh, the echo's now gone. Okay. I don't know the full facts of that. I do know that because of my age and so forth, I don't follow some of the things I would have earlier. But the point is, the case is plausible in fact, but it also is consistent with the effect on the population, that the so-called black population has actually been selectively targeted in a way which was not experienced in earlier times, that is relatively earlier modern times, say 20th century times. And there's nothing like that. I know it's a fact that it's occurring. I know the phenomena, the evidence of the effect of the phenomena. I do not have a direct knowledge of what the information might be, but I say that if it's not that some kind of drug, it's something in terms of behavior consideration or the use of drugs, which is abundant in the population. That's the problem. Being driven into drug using itself would do an effect like that. If there's something that juices that up with some actual direct poison. But I think certain smoking habits, certain drug habits, which become common among people, young youth who are desperate. And that has been increasing during the whole part of the 20th century. The first part of the 20th century was less evil in this question. But it was during the second part of the century where things began to really get evil. And it came together coincident with poverty. It came directly to specifically Negro equality of persecution. All these things are true. As I say, I don't know the exact mechanism that would occur in any particular case. But I do recognize a causal factor in the kind of the educational system, the living standard of people, in terms of the black population. They are absolutely, it is a very systematic intention to eliminate them. In effect, if you take the trend line and you take the second half of the 20th century and then go into the present phase of the consequent century, you see this thing is an abundant characteristic of the nation. And therefore, this has to be attended on that basis. And instead of trying to pick out one thing as a factor, why not pick out the factor as a whole? Why don't we stop what has happened to the black population in these areas? And particularly the killing rates, they're astonishing. And yes, this is an issue which must be attended to in a systematic way. I don't think I know any one cause accept the policy of Wall Street. And the policy of Wall Street is the suitable account for this effect.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll just indicate also there's a 9-minute tape, Lynn, that we'll make sure that we get you, which was sent to out by Robert Kennedy Jr., which just sort of goes through his particular take. He makes it very clear that he's not anti-vaccine. He's talking about a very specific strain. That's not in response to what you said just now, Lynn. I just wanted people to know that that exists. Next question.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Scott. I'm sorry. My name is Scott Muhammad. I'm from Tuskegee, Alabama, and I'm just listening. I'm absorbing, and it's very stimulating. And I have a ton of reports that I would like to share, but I'm aware of the economy of time. So, in recognition of that, I do feel the need to start off by acknowledging and thanking you and those who labor with you for the work you did in the birthing of the original Million Man March. That made a lot of things possible for me as a young black man. I worked organizing on the Million Man March, and had the pleasure of meeting and working with Reverend James Bevel by association with the Million Man March. That being said, I'm here actually by way of the Million Man March. I attended last week, and I think that it would be important for you to know that we, in my community, we had a generation of crack babies that made it to the Million Man March, you know, and they were there. These were people, they really were crack babies with everything that means attached to it. And our labor this year to reconnect them to unsponsored leadership, i.e. Minister Farrakhan, was successful without the media. This was done through social media. This was done through radio. We had no media coverage. BET had an awards where guys were singing about the love of cocaine and baking soda. You know, so this was happening while we were gathering in DC. The youth, the Native Americans, the Latinos, the women were very encouraged by the fact that we did this without the media. So now there's a whole nother avenue open for us and things to discuss. Now, in 2001, we had 666 murders in Chicago. And out of the 666, 530 were black, 538 it was 430 males and 78 females, and then 112 were Mexican, and the rest were filtered between others. I designed a project for Reverend Bevel called The War on Murder. He said he wanted it, and we began working on that to address that. And just when we were about to launch it, well, a big mess hit. Not unrelated to what we were doing in Chicago, I might add. And if I ever have an opportunity to share with you what I experienced, I would like to do that. However, even after the mess, we never stopped our work, and we have been setting up chapters to launch this war effectively around the country. And September 26th in Tuskegee, we launched a model of this war on murder. We took and memorialized, we call them Atonement Memorial Gardens. We designed in edible parks in these neighborhoods. We bring the people to help us grow the edible parks, and we designed Atonement Memorial Gardens to memorialize the victims of murder. We brought the mothers out, we brought the families out. Something that is very, very, very important to realize. When we go to memorialize these boys and girls who were murdered, these are the ones that everybody forgets about or throws to the side. When I go to memorialize Tyrone, all his friends show up. They were waiting for us in the park, the ones that nobody can talk to, the ones that nobody can seem to get to come to any functions like this where good information is happening. When I got to the park, they were waiting, and we began reintroducing people to one another. we began to have the mothers tell stories about their children and why they were loved. Because when we were researching the murders in the newspapers, you get a paragraph and they say, well, this one, he was involved with marijuana, or this one had a gun, or whatever. But nobody says that this was a living soul created in the image and likeness of God, and had he had what he needed, this could have occurred. So that is part of the work that we are doing. We had a very successful groundbreaking. It started, we call it the war on two fronts. My front is what's going on in the neighborhoods, us killing us. That's my front. I don't get off into a lot of what the police are doing or what others are doing. I have to start with what we're doing, because if we want justice, we have to agree to be the source of justice. So the mothers had to get up, and the qualifications to speaking was to speak to what my contribution to the murder of my loved one is. And that's what the whole of that meeting looked like. And so it elevated the energy resonance in the facility, and it spilled over, and it began bringing people who were just passing by into the meeting with us. So it was very successful. I really cannot do this report justice. I need for you to be able to hear exactly what we're doing and the responses. You formulate how you would like to move forward against the forces that are arrayed against us as a whole. I would like you to know some of the tools that you may have at your disposal. And at that, I'd just like your response. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, on this matter, I think the issue is that we have to actually, rather than going at the details are very important, particularly the details that you dealt with. That's an aspect of the whole problem of our nation. And it has to be treated in the proper place, in the proper way. We have to deliver results, and we have to concentrate on the results that are necessary in that particular case, because that case is a major problem for many reasons in the United States as a whole. Historic reasons, the history of the Confederacy, all of these kinds of things all go together in one thing. And therefore, what we need is we need a coherent, complete approach to what the needs are of this nation and of the world. And both, they are inseparable. This nation and the world are inseparable issues. And we have to find the formula to solve those problems. For example, you got the case of what Putin is doing in Russia and outside of Russia. That is an example of a curative measure among nations. What China is doing today is a beautiful example of the accomplishment of nations rising from a relatively backward area into a great spurt of achievement. The same thing is happening in India. Now, India is a place I've had much dealing with in the course of my life. And yes, they are also improving. And what we're trying to do is to bring the system of nations into a new kind of coherence, not one nation at a time, but the way in which we can integrate the struggle of nations for development of the quality of the human mind for all people. And we have the mechanism, especially in Russia. It's there. It's a damaged nation. Russia is a damaged nation, but it's been reconstructed under the leadership of Putin. We have other nations which are struggling to the same thing. China is a really wonderful achievement. India will become more and more an achievement. We have other parts of the world. We have people in South America, nations of South America, which are trying to struggle their way through to the kind of authority which they justify to get rid of the British and the U.S. Actually ruling the nation in these nations. The nations are being ruined. But we can fight for that. We can fight against that sort of stuff. And the time has come that we have to understand, take a human, a worldwide and beyond human approach to the subject of mankind. Because mankind is the only creature, the only living creature which is capable of mastering the galaxy, or lasting what Kepler did. You have to be able to go into not only the solar system, but beyond the solar system, as Kepler demonstrated for the first time. Now the galactic studies now are giving you another lesson. Mankind has a destiny to increase mankind's abilities in order to reach control of Mars, to reach control of the galactic system too. And on that basis, we find that mankind has a destiny which is unique to mankind to reach out and to move the stars. And if we take that view and that approach, we will not miss any of the essential accomplishments.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yes, can you help her with the mic there?
Hello, my name is Renee Mitchell, and I was invited here. This is my first time, and it's really two topics that I really want to discuss. One is the failing public school system, with Mayor de Blasio putting 4 high schools in one school, 30 kids to a classroom. How could a teacher teach that? Okay, people are out to line their own pockets. The kids are being taught to a test. They're not actually learning anything. Okay, and you know, the minority kids is failing between the cracks of the public school system. Not only that, okay, you got people that 90% of the minority, okay, colored folks, Hispanics, okay, is living in shelters, okay, transitional homes, but they have all these zombie buildings, empty abandoned buildings that have been around for years. Why can't you fix them up and open them up and make them for schools and for housing for people to have somewhere to live? They're pricing seniors out of their homes, okay, if you don't have good health care, you don't get the proper service in the hospitals. I mean, the economy, what Obama and Mayor de Blasio and all of them are doing is really wrong. What is your opinion on this?
Well, I think we can say some things on that point. The point is, first of all, that mankind has the capabilities which mankind has. Only mankind has. Mankind is not classifiable as an animal. Mankind cannot be an animal. Some people will behave like animals, but that's because they're misbehaving. And I say misbehaving in the literal meaning of that term. So therefore, what do we have to do? We're up to coming to create a change in the destiny of mankind. This process is already in process in China. It's brought back into process in India. It's being pushed by Putin in Russia and around that, and so forth. So we have all these cases of a tendency to achieve a new status of mankind. Now, the idea of this new status of mankind is already a good idea, but we need to be more specific about it. And we need to have a redefinition of what education is, among other things, and for the circumstances under which people live and work and do what so forth. So we need that. We will not be able to succeed if we limit ourselves to picking on certain issues. We have to have a broad issue which is applied to the population as a whole. And the point is, how do we develop the child? How do we educate the child? How many people talk about that today? How many people really understand what that problem is? Then we get beyond to the school grades, and you find the rate of degeneration of the intellectual character of the students coming out since that period. the 20th century, the scheme has been generally downward. The quality of life is downward. What do you have in the United States today? You have a bunch of very, very poor people, extremely poor people, people with no opportunities, with no future. You can't say that one category of person or other is the limit. You have to say there has to be a broad, universal standard of progress for all. Because if you weaken one, you weaken them all by that margin. And what we have to do now is realize we have an enemy. The enemy is called Obama. He is Obama. He's a satanic figure. Whose stepfather was a mass killer. And the current president, Obama, is a mass killer. That's on the record. He's systemically a mass killer and a thief and everything else. And so therefore what we have to do is, it's a broad issue. We have to say, what is the standard which we as leaders in society, that leaders in terms of education and knowledge, experience, we have to force the issue. Now, we got all these people are being killed in Europe, killed in other places as well, killed off. So we've got to get a concept of justice and the intention for the purpose of mankind's further existence has to be supplied. I think we can do that. And I think that this city, which is the keystone city of the United States, as Alexander Hamilton made clear, and he's still right. Do we take that point of view and say we're going to organize the United States first as the first target of responsibility for us? We've got to go upward for a change. And what you're talking about, yes, there's one way that can work. We have to have a wide, broad, inclusive area support the development of the children of all families.
Thank you.
And we have to make sure that the education of the children actually increases their power to create.
Thank you, Mr.
Not to how to behave, but to create.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. LaRouche. This is Stephen from Manhattan. My question is about the South China Sea. Just a couple of days ago, China announced, as a counter to the U.S. wanting to go over to the South China Sea to keep them in check, they offered the surrounding nations to do joint military drills with them. So if the U.S. does go over there, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb that they're not trying to contain China. They're trying to contain the entire region. So I would like to know the strategic importance of China offering to do joint military drills with the rest of the surrounding countries.
Well, China has taken a very shrewd approach to this matter. And, you know, China is a nation with a certain history. And people of China will tend to echo significant parts of China's history. And they will concentrate on leading forces in China who are most suitable to affect the progress of the people of China. And therefore, the China government does not necessarily react in the way which Obama wants them to react. And if they get too nasty, China and other forces will do something about it. India will do something about it. Russia will do something about it. A few nations in Africa will do something about it. Those that have some more independence, relatively more strength, they will do something about it. People in South America will do something about it. and so forth. So therefore, the point is that the creation of a unity of commitment to realize that we have to deal with the human species as a species. We're not looking at who's to be the guys who be cut off and who's to be promoted. The issue is what has to be promoted. It's the human species. When you think about what Kepler's accomplished in the first important treatment of this the very subject matter, and then you look at the galactic process as such, look at what that involves. What is this? This is mankind in motion to change the galaxy, or the one galaxy. And one good galaxy achieved might lead to a next good galaxy to be added to that. That's where mankind is going. That's where the direction in which mankind's destiny and educational process must go. We must create our role in contributing to the system of the stellar system. And mankind can do it. Look at the idea of the Martian constitution. Well, you could develop something which is human on Mars. That's going to be a very tough thing to deal with. But mankind has the means of access to Mars. Not to live there, but to develop Mars. And to develop improvements on Mars which will benefit other parts of the solar system and beyond. So we have to change the subject from the usual gob, 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 whatever thing they do. Forget it. We have to say, what is mankind? As Nicholas of Cusa said, what is mankind? For example. Therefore, you have people who, Christian leaders, like Nicholas of Cusa, and other persons associated with him, or Leibniz, for example, similar. Universal people. Leibniz spent time in China, in developing China, in a period of life. When you get a person like Leibniz, and you take the history of Leibniz, you find there a more appropriate, proximate example than any other location. What Leibniz accomplished in his lifetime is an example of what the human species can accomplish, because that was what Leibniz was working on.
Hi, Mr. LaRouche. My name's Robert Turcamo. I'm from New York City. I first became aware of your intellect back in 2006 when I read your very prescient prediction that real estate was going to collapse. I was living in Middleburg and Atoka Chase, and you're in Leesburg. And I think along the way you talked about creating a water infrastructure in the United States. What critical to human survival and the advancement of the species, it appears, would be the abundance of clean water. And California is having a huge problem, so are many of the states in the West. What is your view on that? How critical is that, and how can we resolve it?
It's absolutely critical, but the solution is there if you want to go pursue it. The problem is it's not been pursued. We can get better water. We can get it from Earth. We can get it from the atmosphere of Earth. We can get it even from Mars. But we can also get it from the galaxy. In other words, this whole system is a system. Mankind lives on Earth within a system of a much larger range, particularly within the galactic system, the whole series of galaxies, right? The galactic system is such. So it's all there. Implicitly, mankind has the ability, in practice, in prospect, mankind has the ability to get more and more mastery over essential assets for humanity, for the benefit of humanity, from both our own planet, but from the oligarchical system, from the history of it, and therefore the whole system is a mystery which should not be a mystery. Mankind has had, coming out of the 20th century in particular, mankind has had the opportunity of means of developing the use of water and the application of the use of water inside the galaxy. And therefore, it's only ignorance of the scientific facts which cause people to feel that they're imprisoned in a dirty water area. I would say remove the relevant figure in California, remove him from office might be a help to clean up the water.